new chair of the ERG. Steve Baker, Conservative MP, joins me in the studio here. Morning to you.
Good morning. I should say I'm the new old chair as well, because it was me who first chaired the ERG after the referendum and sort of reshaped it. But there we are. I'm delighted to be chair again.
You've made a comeback. You are a little more low-key, perhaps, than Mr. Rees-Mogg, which is why I forgot that. Is there any deal that you, and in as much as you vote as a group, those who support you will vote for?
But we would like to be able to vote for a deal, and actually I'm highly confident that if Boris brings back a deal, it will be a deal which he expects we'll want to support. So yes, but you know,
confident because he's checking it with you, because people are saying, "Come on, Steve, can you accept this or that?"
Let's not pretend he's on the phone to us every few minutes. But if I text the Prime Minister, I'm in a privileged position. He'll text back. I've spoken to him a couple of times. We've seen important people in the government quite regularly. So, you know, this is quite different to under Theresa May. The DUP are working closely with the government. We have every opportunity to feed in, and I hope the Prime Minister succeeds.
But there are some people listening who might be surprised by that. They have heard people like you echo the sort of language of Nigel Farage, which is, why would you hand £39 billion over to the EU unnecessarily? Why not go for no deal and keep the money?
Well, I've always thought that things were a little bit more complex than that. And in the Better Deal paper, which we published after we first voted down the deal, the Theresa May's deal, and then the clean managed Brexit afterwards, we do acknowledge that we need to do some settlement on the money, but we think that the liability is not 39 billion. Indeed, when you look at the withdrawal agreement, it's rather more open-ended than that. So, you know, we are very concerned about the money, and I think the public are, but the overall position is, of course, much more complicated than that.
It is complicated, but there may be people who come to you and say, look, I'm not an expert in any of this, Steve, but I am an expert in the fact that Nigel Farage is breathing down my neck in my constituency. Now, you're one of the people who've said do a deal with the Brexit Party, and the Prime Minister rules it out. So do you get nervous at the idea of a deal which will allow Mr. Farage to claim, whatever's in it, let's be honest, that Boris Johnson has sold out?
Well, as I said on a platform yesterday, if I'm voting for this agreement, it needs to be hand on heart saying this is Brexit, that I'm proud to vote for it, that I'm telling... I mean, I was cheered when I said to members yesterday that if it's Brexit in name only, I will vote against it, even if it costs me the whip, and I was cheered by Conservatives.
So the question is what that means then, the phrase Brexit in name only.
Well,
what's
indeed.
The test of
so
it?
The test is basically what was in the Conservative manifesto. So we need to end the supremacy of European Union law in the UK, end the supremacy of their Supreme Court, leave the customs union, leave the single market, and be a normal independent country. And we have always wanted to have a relationship with the EU of the character they offered us.
Well, that's when you come to Northern Ireland, isn't it? Where the original offer from the EU was effectively to say, treat Northern Ireland differently, treat it as if it's part of the whole of Ireland economy, which would mean, providing perhaps Northern Irish politicians agreed to it in Stormont once there's an executive back, providing they agreed to it, that they could have different rules from Great Britain, from the rest of the UK. Can you live with that?
So after I resigned from the government over, Chequers...
Just to remind people, you were a Brexit minister.
I was a Brexit minister, yeah, and I resigned with David Davis and Boris Johnson. And I said to my colleagues in the ERG, we need to engage with European Union law as it is in relation to the border and demonstrate that we can have a functioning system which involves no new infrastructure and checks on the border. And we did that, and we published a paper. I'd like to believe that inspired Prosperity UK's excellent work with people like Hans Mason and Lars Carlson. And they have now demonstrated that it can all be delivered so that...
Well, there's the question then, just finally. Delivered where? Because you've obviously made a great effort to find a way of not doing it at the border.
Yeah.
But lots of Irish politicians, we heard the leader of Sinn Féin on the programme earlier saying, any checks anywhere on the Islander border consist of a hardening of the border, doesn't matter where they take place, and that is a breach of agreements the UK government has already made.
We are leaving the European Union, and that means there's going to be a change to the status quo. We can't leave the European Union and have no changes. We'd have to remain in the customs union and single market, and then we might as well stay in.
So
we're not going to do that.
In a word, if you would, because we're very short of time, are you saying that will determine in the next few days, if the Irish government can't accept checks somewhere, there won't be a deal?
Remember, there are already some checks in some places. There are checks on duty on the border. There are sometimes checks on passports. I got in trouble as a minister for tweeting this stuff out.
Steve Baker, Chair of the European Research Group, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.